3 minutes ago, everything changed. A state visit months in the making, meticulously planned, diplomatically delicate, historically symbolic, was abruptly cancelled. And not quietly, not diplomatically, but decisively. King Charles himself made the call. Camilla's long-awaited European engagement terminated. The reason? A silent but devastating rejection from Europe's most powerful royal houses. What unfolded behind palace doors may redefine her place in the monarchy forever. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The order did not travel through layers of bureaucracy. It came straight from the king's private office, direct and unmistakable, carrying the weight of a monarch who understood that hesitation would only magnify humiliation. Senior aides, many of whom had spent months shaping every ceremonial detail of the visit, were blindsided. There had been no scheduled contingency, no gradual shift in tone, no warning that the elaborate choreography of diplomacy would be abandoned in a single stroke. The machinery of the palace, usually so controlled and measured, stuttered in disbelief. Something extraordinary had happened, something that forced a king to pull back from the European stage at the very last moment. Behind the formal language of the announcement lay a harsher truth. Reports had reached the palace of what was delicately described as collective discomfort among senior European royals. That phrase, sterile on paper, masked a far more personal rejection. Invitations had cooled, confirmations had stalled, protocol discussions had grown unusually tense. It was not a loud refusal, not a dramatic confrontation, but a slow tightening of silence that made participation impossible. And when the message became undeniable, Charles acted. Camilla, according to insiders, was informed only minutes before the public statement was released. For a figure who had fought for decades to secure her place beside the throne, this visit was more than ceremonial, it was validation. It was Europe acknowledging her fully, not merely as consort by law, but as partner in legacy. To have that recognition withdrawn at the final hour struck at the heart of her long journey toward acceptance. The symbolism was crushing. A state visit is not simply travel, it is a declaration of standing, and its cancellation, especially under these circumstances, carried implications no official communique could soften. Those who observed Charles closely described him as controlled but shaken. The king did not rage. He did not hesitate publicly. Yet beneath the steady exterior lay the unmistakable strain of a man forced to choose between pride and preservation. He understood the optics. Proceeding with a visibly reluctant host would project weakness. Cancelling would project fracture. There was no painless option. Only damage control. The irony is that signs of diplomatic frost had appeared long before today. Subtle delays. Reserved language. A certain distance in tone that seasoned courtiers recognized, but hoped would thaw. Instead, the chill deepened. Attempts at a media blackout crumbled within hours as whispers spilled into headlines. Speculation surged. Analysts dissected every recent gesture, every absence, every tightened smile. The narrative escaped palace control faster than any official could contain it. And so, in one decisive moment, a carefully constructed bridge between Britain and Europe collapsed under the weight of unspoken resistance. Yet this cancellation did not emerge from thin air. It was the final act of a quiet resistance that had been building behind gilded palace doors across Europe. For weeks, the signals were subtle, invitations delayed, protocol confirmations withheld, private courtiers whispering in corridors from Madrid to Stockholm. Something was wrong, and then it became undeniable. Europe's royal elite did not want Camilla beside their thrones. What began as diplomatic hesitation escalated into coordinated silence, a silence loud enough to force a king into an unthinkable decision. At first, the palace dismissed the delays as routine complications. State visits are delicate affairs, layered with security clearances, ceremonial sequencing, and political sensitivities. A postponed confirmation here, a revised draft itinerary there. None of it seemed extraordinary on its own. But patterns do not lie. Weeks passed, and what should have been seamless coordination turned into strained exchanges. Formal responses from the host nations slowed to an uncomfortable crawl. Words that once carried warmth now arrived polished and distant. It was diplomacy stripped of enthusiasm. Behind closed doors, correspondence began circulating carefully phrased, Officially neutral, yet quietly revealing, references to protocol sensitivities appeared repeatedly. That phrase, so bland and bureaucratic on the surface, masked a deeper unease. Sensitivities about precedence, about positioning, about shared platforms. The question was never asked outright, but it hung in the air. Would Camilla's presence complicate more than it would strengthen? Then came the whisper that shifted everything. A senior European queen, Respect, influential and fiercely protective of her institution, had reportedly expressed institutional concerns about appearing in symbolic unity alongside Camilla, not personal criticism, not overt rejection, institution. The word carried weight. It suggested that this was no fleeting discomfort, but a matter of legacy and perception. In royal circles, legacy outweighs friendship, and perception defines survival. What stunned palace insiders even more was the private refusal of a joint balcony appearance. Such moments are choreographed to signal harmony among monarchies. They are visual affirmations of shared history and mutual respect. To decline that gesture was to draw a line without drawing attention. It was rejection delivered in silk gloves, publicly cordial, privately firm. A gala that had been designed as the emotional centerpiece of the visit was quietly restructured. Seating plans shifted, toasts revised, certain ceremonial acknowledgements softened. Camilla's anticipated role narrowed until it was almost ceremonial in name only. No announcement explained the changes. They were simply absorbed into the evolving program, each alteration a quiet subtraction. And yet, the language of diplomacy remained intact. No one spoke harshly, no doors were slammed. Instead, restraint became the weapon. European monarchy alliances, long bonded by shared heritage and cautious cooperation, appeared to prioritize stability over sentiment. Camilla's presence, however, legitimate within Britain, was not universally embraced beyond it. Comparisons surfaced. Other royal spouses had received glowing receptions, effortless endorsements, seamless integration into continental ceremonies. The contrast was impossible to ignore. For Charles, this was more than a scheduling dilemma. It was a revelation. The acceptance he believed had been secured over time was now being tested on foreign soil. Every delayed email, every carefully neutral statement chipped away at certainty. The silence from Europe grew heavier than any spoken criticism. And as the resistance abroad intensified, the question no one dared ask inside Britain began echoing louder. Had Camilla's past finally caught up with her present? History has a long memory, and in royal circles, it never forgets. Decades after scandal first reshaped the monarchy, whispers of loyalty, betrayal, and public distrust still linger. For some European royals, Camilla was not merely a queen consort. She was a symbol, and symbols carry weight. The rejection wasn't about etiquette, it was about legacy. Long before this cancelled visit, long before the polite diplomatic language and the carefully phrased regrets, there existed a narrative that refused to fade. Across Europe's palaces, the memory of Princess Diana still carries an emotional charge that transcends borders. She was not only Britain's princess, she became a global figure of compassion and tragedy. In private royal circles, loyalty to her memory has never been purely sentimental. It has been institutional, quiet, enduring, and for some, unresolved. This is where Camilla's struggle becomes deeply personal, yet painfully political. To many within Britain, time and consistency softened resistance. Years of steady appearances, disciplined restraint, and measured public service gradually rebuilt her image. But continental monarchies operate within their own emotional timelines. For some senior royals, reconciliation may have occurred publicly, yet privately, the past remains unsettled. In those intimate conversations where crowns are set aside and legacy is discussed, in hushed tones, the old fractures still exist. Camilla's presence beside European thrones is not seen through a neutral lens. She is viewed as a figure who emerged from one of the monarchy's most painful chapters. And while history officially closed that chapter, the symbolism never entirely dissolved. A joint balcony appearance is not just ceremony, it is endorsement. A shared gala toast is not merely polite, it is alignment. And alignment with a divisive historical figure requires a level of comfort that not all were prepared to offer. There is also a generational divide that cannot be ignored. Younger royals tend to interpret the past through the language of modernization and acceptance. They speak of evolution, of personal happiness, of moving forward. But older monarchs, shaped by a stricter code of duty and institutional purity, carry a different perspective. For them, the monarchy is not about personal narratives, it is about stability. Image. Continuity. They ask one central question: does this strengthen the institution, or does it reopen wounds? European monarchies, already navigating shifting public opinion in their own countries, guard their stability fiercely. Aligning too closely with any figure perceived as controversial risks unnecessary scrutiny. Camilla's journey from private figure to queen consort was dramatic and in many ways triumphant. Yet triumph does not erase division, it simply coexists with it. And in the delicate ecosystem of royal diplomacy, even lingering discomfort can shift alliances. For Charles, this reality cuts deeper than any headline. He has spent decades defending his love and ultimately formalizing it within the framework of the crown. But now, faced with Europe's cool reception, he must confront a painful possibility that the very choice that brought him personal fulfillment continues to complicate his reign. His conflict is not abstract, it is intimate. Protect his wife fully and risk broader strain, or temper her visibility and shield the institution he inherited. And for Camilla, the emotional toll is impossible to measure publicly. To have fought so long for acceptance, only to feel echoes of rejection from abroad, is a reminder that history never truly disappears. It waits, it resurfaces, it tests resilience, but the rejection abroad triggered something far more dangerous at home. Questions about Camilla's authority inside her own court. When the doors closed at Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere reportedly shifted. Meetings stretched longer. Voices rose behind polished oak panels. Senior advisors warned of reputational damage. And in the center of it all stood Charles, torn between protecting his wife and protecting the institution. This was no longer about a visit. It was about survival. Within hours of the cancellation, an emergency strategy session was convened. Not the routine briefings that accompany minor diplomatic adjustments, but a full gathering of senior advisors, communications chiefs, constitutional experts, and trusted confidants. The tone was urgent, stripped of ceremony. The question hanging over the table was brutal in its simplicity. How did this happen, and how do we prevent it from escalating further? The monarchy thrives on controlled optics. Now the optics were unraveling in real time. Senior advisors spoke in measured but unmistakably firm language. They urged reputational containment. Every word released to the public would need surgical precision, every appearance recalibrated. The fear was not just embarrassment, it was the perception of disunity. If European royals could signal reluctance so openly, what message did that send about Britain's standing? About Charles's authority? About the strength of his reign? The concern was global. The monarchy does not operate in isolation. Its power rests on influence, tradition, and symbolic cohesion, and that cohesion suddenly felt fragile. The debate quickly sharpened around an uncomfortable possibility. Should the visit proceed without Camilla? The idea was explosive, almost unthinkable. To send the king alone would project decisiveness, but also confirm that her presence was the obstacle. To cancel entirely protected unity at home, but expose division abroad. There was no elegant solution. Only trade-offs, only damage control. Charles listened, but those in the room could sense his frustration simmering beneath composure. His loyalty to Camilla was not strategic, it was personal. Yet the crown demands sacrifice, even from those who wear it. As voices overlapped and arguments tightened, subtle fault lines emerged within the palace itself. Some aides privately questioned whether earlier diplomatic signals had been underestimated. Others insisted the European resistance had been misread from the start. Speculation about internal blame began circulating quietly, not in accusation but in anxious whispers. In moments of crisis, institutions often search for a scapegoat. The risk now was that Camilla's role would be scrutinized, not only by foreign courts, but by her own. Meanwhile, Camilla reportedly retreated from scheduled engagements, a decision framed as practical but interpreted as strategic. Her absence was noticeable. Silence can be dignified, but it can also feel isolating. Every cancelled appearance, every quiet day off the calendar, fueled speculation. Was this temporary caution or a deeper repositioning? Even within palace walls, uncertainty grew. Anxiety settled over the monarchy's stability narrative. For years, Charles had worked to project calm continuity after decades of turbulence. His reign was meant to symbolize steady transition, a bridge between eras. Now, that bridge appeared under strain. Advisors worried that prolonged speculation would invite broader questions about leadership, influence, and the monarchy's global relationships. In a modern media landscape, perception can shift faster than policy, and as strategies were drafted and redrafted behind closed doors, the palace began to realize something unsettling. Containment might already be impossible. The story had escaped its walls. It was no longer confined to council chambers or diplomatic cables. It was spreading, reshaped by commentators and amplified by emotion. Yet even as the palace struggled to contain the fallout, the public response began spiraling beyond control. Within minutes of the announcement, social media ignited. Hashtags trended globally. Supporters called it humiliation, critics called it karma, analysts called it unprecedented. The monarchy, once a fortress of controlled narrative, found itself exposed to a tidal wave of commentary, and every tweet, every headline, sharpened the crisis. The reaction was immediate and unforgiving. Viral hashtags began questioning Camilla's legitimacy, some blunt, others wrapped in sarcasm, but all carrying the same underlying charge: rejection. What had been a carefully phrased diplomatic withdrawal was now framed as a public rebuke. In the digital arena, nuance disappears, complexity collapses into accusation, and within hours, the story no longer belonged to the palace, it belonged to the crowd. British public opinion fractured along familiar lines. Loyalists defended the decision as strategic, even wise, arguing that Charles had shielded the crown from deeper embarrassment. Others saw weakness. They questioned why Europe's royals would hesitate at all if Camilla's standing was truly secure. The divide was not merely political, it was emotional. For some, this moment reopened old wounds. For others, it confirmed suspicions long buried beneath polite acceptance. International commentators amplified the tension. News panels dissected the cancellation as a diplomatic snub, not an administrative adjustment. Words like rebuff, isolation, and symbolic rejection echoed across broadcasts. Analysts speculated about fractures within royal alliances, suggesting that Europe's subtle resistance signaled a shift in power dynamics. The monarchy's global image, carefully curated over generations, suddenly felt vulnerable. Tabloids seized the narrative with ruthless efficiency. Headlines hinted at internal friction, suggesting that palace advisors had miscalculated Europe's tolerance. Anonymous sources were cited. Unnamed insiders described tense meetings. The speculation fed itself. Each article intensified scrutiny. Each rumor blurred the boundary between fact and interpretation. The palace, accustomed to guiding public conversation, now chased it instead. Royal watchers replayed recent appearances, examining body language with forensic intensity. A brief hesitation in a handshake, a tightened smile, a seemingly minor seating adjustment at a previous event. In hindsight, everything appeared significant. Patterns were constructed where perhaps none existed, yet the impact was real. The narrative of rejection gained momentum because it felt plausible, and plausibility is powerful. Amid the noise, a subtle shift emerged. Sympathy toward Charles began to rise. Commentators framed him as a monarch caught between loyalty and duty, a husband forced to navigate public humiliation for the sake of institutional preservation. His composed demeanor, once taken for granted, was now interpreted as restraint under pressure. The contrast was striking. As Camilla's position was questioned, Charles's burden appeared heavier, more human. Younger voices, especially online, began calling for modernization. They argued that if the monarchy could not command universal respect abroad, perhaps it needed to redefine itself at home. Transparency, adaptation, a more assertive approach to global partnerships. The cancellation became symbolic of a larger tension between tradition and transformation. Behind the scenes, palace public relations teams worked relentlessly, drafting statements, refining messaging, attempting to steady the narrative before it spiraled further. But control felt elusive. The story had escaped into a digital storm where emotion outpaced explanation. And as the storm intensified outside the gates, Charles faced a decision that could define his reign. A king is not merely a husband, he is the embodiment of continuity. And in that role lies a cruel paradox. What protects the crown may wound the heart. As European rejection hardened into diplomatic reality, Charles stood at a crossroads. Support Camilla publicly and risk broader isolation, or withdraw her quietly and shield the monarchy from fracture. In the quiet that followed the public uproar, the weight of the decision settled heavily on Charles. This was not about headlines anymore. It was about legacy. Every monarch understands that history does not measure intentions, it measures outcomes. Charles had waited a lifetime to ascend his throne. He had endured scrutiny, scandal, reinvention. Now, at the very moment when stability was supposed to define his reign, he faced a test that struck at the center of his identity. Was he first a husband or first a king? Advisors presented scenarios stripped of sentiment. They outlined worst-case diplomatic consequences if the visit proceeded. A visibly reluctant host, awkward protocol shifts. Photographers dissected for tension, whispered narratives of isolation spreading through European courts. The image of unity so essential to royal diplomacy could crack further. They spoke of alliances of soft power, of the monarchy's role in sustaining Britain's global influence. Their tone was not dramatic, but the implications were. This was about protecting the institution from prolonged erosion. Yet behind the strategic language lay a human struggle. Those present at private briefings described a visible strain in Charles's demeanor. His composure remained intact, but something deeper flickered beneath it, a recognition that the cost of leadership is often personal. He knew that proceeding defiantly might appear strong in the short term but dangerous in the long term. He also knew that withdrawing Camilla would feel like concession, perhaps even betrayal. The monarchy's history is filled with sacrifices made in silence. Kings who relinquished personal happiness for political stability, queens who endured public doubt to preserve continuity. Charles, acutely aware of these precedents, understood the gravity of symbolism. Cancelling the visit would not simply alter a schedule, it would signal recalibration. It would communicate that the crown prioritizes institutional equilibrium over individual assertion. The symbolism was immense. There was also the fear of long-term damage. If European royals felt uneasy now, forcing the issue could deepen resistance. Diplomacy thrives on subtlety. Sometimes restraint carries more strength than confrontation. Charles had to consider not only today's optics, but tomorrow's alliances. A fractured relationship among monarchies could reverberate for years, weakening the very network that sustains tradition across borders. At the same time, he was fully aware of the narrative forming around him. A king who cancels a visit under pressure risks appearing reactive. A king who refuses to adjust risks appearing isolated. Either choice would be interpreted, analyzed, debated. Legacy is shaped not only by actions but by perception, and perception was already volatile. The final decision, described internally as strategic recalibration, was delivered with quiet authority. The language softened the reality, but the impact was undeniable. Charles chose preservation. He chose to absorb criticism rather than escalate conflict. It was a decision rooted in caution, perhaps even wisdom, but it was not painless, because beneath the institutional reasoning lay a personal truth. Protecting the crown required limiting Camilla's exposure at a moment when she most needed validation. That tension would not disappear with a press release. It would linger. It would reshape dynamics within the palace. But the cancellation did more than protect alliances. It altered Camilla's standing in ways that may not be reversible. She did not issue a statement. She did not appear at the gates. She did not contest the decision. Camilla's silence became louder than any speech. For supporters, it was dignity. For critics, it was defeat. But inside palace walls, her absence from the diplomatic stage signaled something deeper, a recalibration of influence. In the days that followed the cancellation, her calendar thinned. Engagements that once seemed routine were quietly postponed or reassigned. Public appearances became selective, measured, almost cautious. Officially, nothing had changed. Unofficially, everything felt different. When a figure accustomed to standing at the monarch's side begins stepping back, observers take notice, and within royal structures, absence carries meaning. Inside her private office, subtle adjustments began unfolding. Staff responsibilities were reviewed. Certain advisors, once closely aligned with her international outreach initiatives, found themselves redirected toward domestic charitable work. It was framed as strategic focus, but to seasoned palace watchers, it looked like repositioning. Influence within a royal court does not disappear overnight, it shifts. It redistributes, it adapts. The question was whether this shift was temporary recalibration or the beginning of long-term limitation. Speculation intensified about her international role. Would future state visits be structured differently? Would Charles travel more frequently alone? Would other senior royals assume greater prominence abroad? These were not questions raised publicly by the palace, but they circulated quietly among diplomats and commentators. In monarchies, representation is power. To represent is to be recognized, and to be sidelined, even subtly, alters perception. The emotional toll of perceived rejection cannot be underestimated. Camilla had spent years transforming skepticism into cautious acceptance. She had endured criticism, navigated scrutiny, and maintained composure through relentless comparison. The European hesitation reopened that history. It reminded her and everyone watching that legitimacy in our royal life is never permanent. It is continuously negotiated, earned, defended. Within the court, hierarchy is delicate. A queen consort commands respect, yet that respect is sustained by visibility and affirmation. As her international profile appeared to contract, the spotlight naturally expanded elsewhere. Other senior royals began assuming more prominent roles in diplomatic engagements. Their visibility increased, not through overt promotion, but through quiet necessity. The balance shifted, not dramatically, not publicly, but perceptibly. Debate emerged over future overseas representation. Advisors considered the optics of joint appearances versus solo engagements. Would sending Charles alone project strength, or confirm division? Would pairing him with another senior royal recalibrate alliances more effectively? Each scenario carried implications. Each decision subtly redrew the map of influence within the monarchy. For Camilla, the uncertainty was perhaps the most difficult element. There was no formal demotion, no official statement of reduced authority. Yet, legacy is shaped not only by titles but by moments. And this moment, this cancelled visit, this international hesitation became a turning point that could shadow her reign indefinitely. Would history frame her as resilient under pressure, or as a figure whose acceptance remained conditional? Silence can be powerful, but it can also be isolating. In choosing restraint, she preserved dignity. Yet restraint does not erase doubt. It lingers in corridors, in headlines, in quiet recalculations of protocol. And yet, as one door closed in Europe, another question loomed over the monarchy's future. This was never just about a cancelled visit. It was about perception, authority, acceptance. If Europe's royal houses can quietly reject a British queen consort, what precedent does that set? The monarchy survives on symbolism, and symbolism, fractured, can echo for generations. The fallout from this moment may extend far beyond one trip. In the language of diplomacy, gestures matter as much as treaties. A postponed appearance can signal hesitation. A declined balcony moment can suggest distance. And a cancelled state visit, especially one so publicly anticipated, can ripple through alliances that rely on mutual affirmation. Britain's diplomatic soft power has long rested not only on policy, but on pageantry, on the quiet reassurance that its monarchy commands respect across borders. Now that reassurance feels less certain. Foreign ministries will never admit to reading symbolism as closely as royal watchers do. Yet they do. They measure posture, tone, partnership. If a queen consort appears controversial abroad, even subtly, it complicates every handshake. Future state visits may now be structured with greater caution, schedules refined, appearances calibrated. Perhaps Charles will travel more frequently without Camilla in highly sensitive contexts. Perhaps other senior royals will be elevated strategically to represent stability. Each adjustment, however minor it appears, would mark a shift born from this moment. Scrutiny abroad is likely to intensify. Questions about royal legitimacy, once confined to tabloids and opinion columns, may surface in diplomatic corridors. Not openly, not dramatically, but carefully. Observers will assess whether this was an isolated hesitation or the beginning of a broader cooling. European alliances among monarchies have always balanced tradition with pragmatism. As generational change sweeps through continental thrones, younger rulers may prioritize different narratives: modernization, transparency, emotional authenticity. How Camilla fits within that evolving framework remains uncertain. Inside Britain, the public may begin re-evaluating what modern monarchy truly means. The institution has survived wars, abdications, scandals, and transformation. It adapts. It absorbs shock, yet each test reshapes its internal architecture. Charles's reign, still defining itself, now enters a more precarious chapter. He ascended with promises of continuity and quiet reform. Instead, he faces a symbolic fracture that challenges his authority not domestically, but internationally. There is also the deeper question of reconciliation. Can European royal houses recalibrate their stance? Can shared history outweigh lingering discomfort? Or has a boundary been quietly established? In royal life, relationships are rarely repaired through confrontation. They mend slowly, through strategic appearances and controlled narratives. The path forward will require patience and perhaps sacrifice. The generational shift unfolding across Europe adds another layer of complexity. Younger heirs and consorts may interpret this moment differently than their predecessors. Some may view the controversy as outdated, a relic of past tensions. Others may see it as a warning about the enduring power of symbolism. As these younger figures rise in influence, alliances may subtly realign, reshaping the monarchy's continental landscape. What remains undeniable is that Charles' decision has altered the trajectory of his reign, not catastrophically, not irreversibly, but undeniably. Leadership is defined in moments of pressure, and this was one of them. He chose caution over confrontation, preservation over pride. History will judge whether that choice strengthened the crown or exposed its fragility. The monarchy endures by projecting inevitability, by suggesting that, no matter the turbulence, it stands unshaken. Yet this episode revealed that even thrones are sensitive to perception. Even crowns can feel the weight of quiet rejection. And as the dust begins to settle, one final truth remains impossible to ignore. 3 minutes, that's all it took to cancel a visit, but the consequences may last a lifetime. History will remember this not as a scheduling adjustment, but as a defining fracture in a reign still finding its footing, for Charles, for Camilla, for the crown itself. And the most unsettling part, this may only be the beginning. What unfolded was swift, but the mark it left was permanent. Charles's reign, still shaping its identity, is now etched with a visible diplomatic fracture. Monarchies survive on the illusion of seamless respect, on the quiet understanding that their authority travels unchallenged across borders. That illusion cracked. Not shattered, but cracked enough for the world to notice. And once a crack appears in the facade of inevitability, it becomes impossible to pretend it was never there. For Camilla, the global image she fought years to rebuild has shifted again. Not undone, not erased, but altered. Acceptance is fragile in royal life. It is built through repetition, through symbolic endorsement, through visible unity. Europe's hesitation has inserted doubt back into a narrative that once seemed settled. Fairly or unfairly, this moment will trail her legacy. Every future appearance abroad will be measured against it, every invitation examined for hidden reluctance. The question will linger, unspoken yet powerful. Is she fully embraced or merely tolerated? Charles's legacy, too, is now intertwined with this choice. He acted to protect alliances, to preserve the institution from deeper embarrassment. Yet history is rarely kind to nuance. Some will see prudence, others will see concession. His decision reflects the burden of monarchy, a leader who must absorb personal cost to defend collective stability. Whether that choice strengthens the crown over time or emboldens quiet resistance abroad remains uncertain. European monarchies, by signaling discomfort through restraint rather than confrontation, have demonstrated a subtle independence. They did not rebel. They did not issue statements. They simply withheld warmth. In royal diplomacy, that restraint carries enormous weight. It suggests a recalibration of relationships, a reminder that alliances are mutual, not automatic. The British monarchy can no longer assume universal endorsement, it must actively sustain it. Inside the palace, strategy has replaced routine. Damage control is not dramatic, it is deliberate, messaging refined, appearances recalculated, roles reassessed. The machinery of monarchy does not collapse under pressure, it tightens, but tighten creates tension, and tension, over time, tests even the most enduring institutions. There is also the private dimension, the emotional strain that no communique can capture. A marriage built on perseverance now faces fresh scrutiny. Charles and Camilla have endured decades of public judgment, yet this moment strikes at a different vulnerability. It is one thing to withstand domestic criticism. It is another to face subtle rejection from peers who share the same sovereign mantle. The personal and the political have collided once again. The monarchy's balancing act has never felt more delicate. It must project confidence while acknowledging fragility. It must assert continuity while navigating transformation. It must defend legacy without appearing defensive. And above all, it must maintain the perception that the crown stands above turbulence, even when turbulence presses against it. Future confrontation seems inevitable, though undefined. Perhaps it will come in the form of another delicate invitation, perhaps in a reshaped alliance, perhaps in a public gesture designed to heal what was strained, or perhaps in silence that speaks louder than ceremony. What is certain is that this chapter is not closed, it is suspended waiting. Because in royal history, moments like this do not disappear, they resurface, often when the crown is least prepared. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.